am super grateful for this opportunity to talk to you all because I think that what I'm going to talk about today addresses some of the most important issues of our time, some of which include Nick Cage films, films that are bad but also good, films that don't make me as a woman feel like I am chewing on broken glass, and of course Joaquin Phoenix in the early 2000s. So today I am going to posit that you all should watch 8mm by Joel Schumacher from 1999, based on all of those merits that I just listed. And if people don't mind, I'd really appreciate if you could all save your questions until the end, just because we'll have time for a Q&A at that point. Slide. Okay, so what is 8mm? So this is a thriller with Nick Cage, like I said, directed by Joel Schumacher. There were a bunch of different studios involved in producing it, but it's not really important to what we're going to talk about here today. Basically, this film is about a private detective who is investigating the origins of what appears to be a snuff film. So snuff, for those who don't know, is like a form of pornography where somebody dies in the making of it. He's investigating the origins of one of these films that a rich widow finds in her deceased husband's safe. So what happens is Nick Cage teams up with Joaquin Phoenix, or Max California as his character is called, who works in a sex shop in order to obtain access to the underbelly of the porn world. Now, what Nick Cage and Max California find very rapidly forces them into a fight for their lives and also to avenge a teen girl's death, because of course the film turns out to be real. Slide. Now, I want to address a couple of concerns before I go on with my argument here. So, obviously, Nick Cage is a very memed figure in this digital age that we are living in. He is kind of known for doing kind of melodramatic thrillers, maybe not the best quality of movies. People have also made the argument that he's never really playing a character, he is only ever playing himself. So that I say, fair criticism. I would not say that 8mm is a film that is immune to that, but I'm going to talk in a minute about why I think that it doesn't matter. You can also see here, this is the current rating on Letterboxd as of today. So it's got a 3.2 out of 5. Now, it also has 196 fans, which suggests that some people really do quite enjoy this movie. Again, kind of middle of the road ratings. It has that Nick Cage stigma attached to it, but does that mean that it's a totally worthless movie? I don't think so, and let me tell you why. Slide. So this is one of those movies, I think, that is so bad it's good. Now, this used to be a type of film that was way, way more common to see in the general kind of movie ecosystem of the US, but also the world. Now, as we have moved into the era of kind of AI-written movies or AI-produced visuals, committee-written blockbusters, tons of different cinematic universes. Now that we've gotten into that era, it is more common to find movies that are just bad, rather than so bad it's good. I think that 8mm is kind of from that earlier time when you still had movies that you could be kind of aware of being bad, even though they're extremely entertaining to watch. Of course, part of that is actually one of the most criticized features of the film, which is the melodrama. Here's a very melodramatic still of Nick Cage kicking some butt. So, for some people who really, really need that suspension of disbelief to enjoy a story, I would say, fair enough, maybe this isn't for you. However, I think that the melodrama, that famous Nick Cage melodrama, really lends this film a certain je ne sais quoi, which contributes to it being a film that, in spite of its badness, is also kind of good. There are a couple of other things that also contribute to this. So there's some really weird editing in this film. Everybody loves to kind of point out some weird editing mistakes when it comes to film. For example, you can actually see the boom mic in a couple of shots, which is a very nice fourth wall break for those who enjoy searching for that sort of thing. There is also a really weird thing where whenever Nick Cage and Max California are kind of exploring the underbelly of the porn world, Middle Eastern music plays. Kind of a peculiar choice. It makes you wonder what they were thinking. Nonetheless, I think that maybe that adds a little bit something more to analyze in the film, more to puzzle over beyond the film's actual plot, which, you know, is not the most predictable thing in the world, given how terrible some of the acting is. Now, if the acting had been good in this, then it might have been an even more horrendously predictable movie, but because it is genuinely hard to discern what many of the actors and actresses are going for in this film, it actually makes it harder to tell what is going to happen next in the plot. So, in a way, the bad acting kind of balances out the bad script. There's this wonderful B-plot, and by wonderful I mean terrible, with Nick Cage's wife, who just kind of repeatedly calls him on the phone to say, honey, please come home. It's that thing where the woman at home is very frustrated that her husband has to be away at work. I don't really know what this film was going for, because does she want him to quit his job? He has to travel constantly as a private detective. So that's a little bit interesting to puzzle over. There are many scenes when this B-plot is happening where it truly feels like exact dialogue is being recycled multiple times. So, you know, there is this. It is kind of bad enough that it is genuinely entertaining and endearing. And it has a kind of warmth to it that committee-written blockbusters, which are bad, do not have. Those, in contrast, feel cold and sterile, I feel. The one other thing I will mention is some of Joaquin Phoenix's costumes in this, genuinely baffling. I don't know why they would do this to him. You can see this very basic skull and crossbones tattoo that he has on his bicep. I have never seen a person with a tattoo like this. This kind of feels like what some kind of like Christian anti-tattoo association would think a tattoo looks like on like a bad guy. So that is another thing that's kind of fun to pick out. They also forced him to wear crop tops and extra small shirts that kind of turn into crop tops on him. You can see here one of the shots in the bottom right of exactly how these fit on him. In other words, they kind of massacre my boy in a way, but, you know, it is, again, one of those things that lends the film a little piece of soul that it would not have had if it was a perfect AI-polished blockbuster. And speaking of Joaquin, let's go to the next slide. Now, Joaquin is probably one of the best things about this movie. And let's talk about why. So, in this film, he looks like a painted whore, similar to how he looks in Gladiator. So he's got that eyeliner going on. He does also have blue hair in a couple of scenes, which is pretty interesting. Piercings all over. Again, there's that extra small t-shirt for some reason. You can see that even the shirts that like cover him properly are like just still too tight. Even though he's in shape, they just make him look really bad. You get to see him in a black pea coat. And there are other things about his character that are just so damn endearing. So at one point, he calls porn watchers sad, pathetic perverts or something like that. Because, you know, those of you who are not aware, until the digital age kind of ruined society, it used to be quite stigmatizing to be a man who watches pornography. He, at one point, is like watching hardcore pornography with Nick Cage for research, and he responds to this with like, I think I'm gonna be sick, and this is a screen cap right here of his face when that is going on. He also, as he works in this sex shop, he is like pretending to read porn when Nick Cage shows up. Nick Cage points out that he is highlighting and text marking in the book. And so, you know, he is forced to reveal that he is actually reading Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. So, in other words, pretends to read porn for business reasons, but is actually reading real literature. They do massacre my boy. It is worth mentioning, I think, that you get to see more of him bloody and sobbing than you see any women or girls. So you could actually, if you wanted to do a really feminist reading of this film, make an argument that violence against men is kind of more objectified and sexualized than violence against women. You can see here some of the guys who are traffickers and involved in the really dark stuff in the porn world. They tie him to a crucifix and use him as target practice after beating him up. So you do get to see him kind of bloody and crying in a strange inversion of what you might see if you were looking on any kind of free porn website, obviously with the gender swap. Next slide, please. Now this brings me to my last point. This is a crazily progressive film. And this brings me to that thing that I said about how this is a movie that, as a woman, doesn't make me want to eat glass. This is literally why. So a couple of points I want to touch on as to why I think it's anti-porn, pro-woman, and totally awesome. Nick Cage literally lights a sex trafficker on fire. Bellissimo. Both of the male leads think that porn is gross, and porn is portrayed very, very badly by the narrative in general. So really feeding into that cultural stigma that, again, before the internet kind of showed up, really plays into that cultural stigma that used to be much more of a thing. It's not glamorized as a way to make a quick buck. You do not see any women who are happy doing porn in this. In fact, it is really, really framed as a way for men to prey upon women. And violence is also not eroticized, perhaps with the exception of the Joaquin Phoenix on the crucifix scene. Instead, it is shown as pretty disturbing. You don't really also see much of the actual sexual violence in this. So you do get to see the men beating each other up on behalf of the women who have experienced sexual violence, but they don't show really that much at all of the actual sexual violence itself, which therefore leaves very little room for it to be objectified or eroticized in any way. I will also say that once Nick Cage finally confronts the bad guys, there are no men's mental health or men's loneliness excuses made for the sexual sadists. I believe one of them says something along the lines of, I do it because I like it, and I'm an ordinary man. Another thing that I will note that isn't actually on this slide is that the main bad guy is portrayed as coming from a very traditional religious family with a mother who is heavily religious and is in the scene that we see them in, she is very doting upon her son and trying to serve him. So it even makes a little bit of a hint at where this kind of desire to use women comes from, where that entitlement to women originally comes from. And yeah, it also really does something about commenting that it is not just total monsters or inhuman entities that do these horrible things to women and girls. A lot of times it is people who otherwise can pass as completely normal men. Another thing that is really, really amazing about this is that Nick Cage, despite having a daughter and a wife, weirdly is not participating in looking for this girl and avenging her out of really any motivation other than thinking that she had an innate worth that was violated by the men who preyed upon her. So there is none of this like, I must help because I have a daughter or a wife or etc. He literally just does it and wants to avenge her because it makes him angry that a woman was, or a girl I should say, was taken advantage of and hurt in this way. And it makes him extremely angry. He has really no relation to her at all. He only does this because it is the right thing to do and because he recognizes the innate worth of her humanity. And with Max California teaming up with him, it also really sends a message because it is showing two men who previously didn't know each other at all, bonded together solely by their desire to avenge the death of an exploited young girl that they actually have no relation to whatsoever. There also is no monetary incentive for either of them to be doing this because all that Nick Cage was getting paid for was finding out the truth about the film. He did not get paid any money for actually going after the people who did this to the girl and avenging her death. So really, really, like a movie where the men just do good things and are badass trying to do it without this kind of like misogynist ulterior motive of like, oh, like, you know, I have a woman of my own and I must therefore like do this in her interest. No, it is purely because of the innate humanity of the victim. Next slide, please. All right, in summation, lots of eye candy, laughs with the bad editing, and overall, I would even go so far as to call this film a feminist rage fantasy, which is something that I do not very lightly add things to the category of. This movie is my white whale. It is a so bad it's good movie that isn't casually misogynist. In fact, it is actually a so bad it's good feminist movie, a type of which I have not seen any others. It's bad, but that makes it funny, which provides some much needed levity in the context of an otherwise very serious plot. So the overdramatic, the boom mic being seen in some shots, baffling music choices, often terrible acting, and of course the please come home honey plot. It's got walking and eyeliner and a crop top. You know, you get to see his biceps a lot. Not much more to say about that. And finally, it is anti-porn and shows men fighting to the death for a teenage girl that they don't even know. Is 8mm classifiable as a chick flick? Perhaps it should be. I'll leave you to be the judge of that. And then one last slide for my references, please. Questions?